Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. I'm David Bird with Reality Reimagined. I'm an award-winning photographer and Photoshop artist that specializes in fantasy composite art. And we're continuing forward with the photography lighting tutorials on the channel, exploring some of my favorite lighting patterns, explaining how you get the lights there, and then some ways that you can augment it to make it your own. So today we're going to explore my second favorite lighting pattern, which is Rembrandt Lighting. And it gets its namesake after the Dutch painter Rembrandt. I cannot pronounce his first name, his middle name, and his other names, but Rembrandt, not the toothpaste, the painter, is what we can say. What Rembrandt Lighting is reflective of is that Rembrandt, as the painter, was well known for always having in his paintings a triangle of light that would be on the opposite side of the subject's face from wherever the light source was coming in. So for instance, in the painting, if you're looking straight at a person in the painting, the sun or light source is coming in from the left side of the painting. On the right side of the person's face, you would see a small triangle of light. And that was this kind of key element that was very unique to his work. So therefore, we try to do the same thing in lighting. Now, introductions before we continue forward. This is my wonderful friend Janelle. You've seen her in some of the previous videos here on the channel. If you'd like to see more of her amazing artwork, visit the Instagram account at the link below. So, to get the Rembrandt lighting, we're going to be using our main light or key light here. I'm using a Godox AD600 strobe with a 47-inch Octabox from Strobe Pro. It is positioned off camera left. It is raised above and tilted down at a 45-degree angle. To be able to get this light into the perfect position to get that triangle of light is a little bit tricky. And sometimes you can execute it perfectly in camera. Other times you can get incredibly close and then rely upon Photoshop to potentially bring out more light in that triangle or add just a few more shadows to define the triangle itself. So there is no good way to say where the light needs to go from your left as you position it to somebody. You just need to do a few test shots to see how the light is coming into play. Ultimately, the triangle of light on the left side of the subject's face is created because the light is cascading across their nose. So that's the key element. Now, if you have them facing straight toward camera and then you have them turn their head toward the light, when they do, now that's going to be lost because the bridge of their nose has moved into the light, so the light is cascading completely on their face. So Rembrandt is a great pattern of light, but it is one that is unfortunately very restrictive on how much the models can move and pose because they need to face straight forward to camera so that the bridge of their nose will create that shadow. We're going to take a couple shots and show you what it looks like, and then we're going to introduce a second Godox AD600 strobe, this one using a 12 by 55-inch Stripbox, again from Strobe Pro, into the scene to create a couple of different elements of separation to show you how you can augment this lighting pattern. We're shooting with a Canon EOS R with an EF 24-70 Mark II mm lens. We're shooting at f11, ISO 400, and a shutter speed of 1/160th of a second. I have metered my lights using a Sekonic light meter to make sure that the power of the light is exactly at f11. I highly recommend that you meter your lights. Never trust the LCD in the back of your camera because LCDs, they're filthy, dirty liars. They lie all the time. They lie. Okay, so anyway, let's come straight to me. Good. Hold right there for me. Here we go. Firing up that Canon. Good. Right there. That's perfect, my friend. Hold. There we go. We've got a pretty defined triangle. We were losing just a little bit of light in the furthest extreme left corner of her eye. Her left, camera right's corner of her eye. That's something that we would have to compensate for in Photoshop. Before we introduce the second light, I do want to talk about that very briefly. When you are working with Rembrandt lighting, I know I say this peacefully, if you want to be as technically precise and perfect in camera, there's nothing wrong with that. Take as much time as you need to position the lights, make sure that they are where you want them to be and so forth. But I encourage you to understand that the longer that you take fiddling with the light, moving it a half of an inch, maybe a degree or two of a tilt and so forth, the longer that it's going to take for that interaction with you and the model to continue forward working. So this is not me saying, I don't know what, right? See, Janelle has the patience of Job. Like she is wonderful to work with and I greatly appreciate that. But you may encounter folks in the future who, if you get a momentum and an energy in the shoot, and then you suddenly stall it because you're spending so much time meticulously adjusting a modifier to try to minimize so little of an overspill of light that can easily be taken care of in Photoshop. That's what I challenge you to start pushing your comfort zones, to start embracing the second half of artwork and photography, which is retouching, which is Photoshop. And that's just my opinion. It doesn't have to be yours. But to me, photography is one half of the journey, Photoshop is the other half. So if I can get it as close as possible in camera and trust my skill set in Photoshop to finish the job later, I would rather keep the shoot moving and maintain the energy instead of messing around with the lights and just trying to find that kind of perfection. Again, if you want to go on that journey, it's all up to you. So I feel like there's a whole show going on behind me. I love Janelle to death, and I'm like, every now and then I'm afraid I'm going to turn around and she's going to be like in a clown suit and be like, hi, ta-da, you know, anyway. Let's not do clowns. I hate clowns. We gotta go. It's not safe anymore. All right, so we're going to introduce the second light into the scene. Again, that's that Godox 8600 strobe. The first way we're going to use it is I'm going to essentially position it so that it will fire against the paper itself, so that it will illuminate the background completely. And the goal with this is, if we think about the framing of camera left and camera right, we have our key light coming in from camera left, it's cascading across, creating the Rembrandt triangle on the left side of her face, or camera right. We'll have a lot of shadow on camera right on her. If we illuminate the background behind her, then we have what's known as separation. So she's separated from the background because if the background is dark on camera right, we have shadow on the right side of her face. As we travel in the image, it can feel like she's getting lost in the shadows in the background, which is okay. It's a very dramatic image. But if you use a light in the background to separate, then we feel more connection to the subject. We can see more of them, and the shadows that are indicative of Rembrandt lighting come into play to give more drama, because ultimately we can appreciate them because they're only on the subject, not the background as well. So I'm going to power on the Godox 8600 strobe with the 12 by 55 inch strip box from Strobe Pro. And links for all of this gear will be in the description below, by the way. And none of them are affiliate links, by the way. I don't make any money from it. I just provided it for you so you know precisely what I'm using in these videos. So I've metered this light in the background to make sure that it's going to be firing at f5.6. I would have to set my camera to f5.6 to be able to get enough light from that, which means it's going to be minimal. Here we go. And so now, as you can see, we have good shadows on Janelle's right side. We've got the Rembrandt triangle, but now we have that warm light that is in the background separating her from that background, so that ultimately we can start to appreciate the shadows on her just a little bit more. Now, the final position of this second light you can bring into the scene to illuminate the person from behind. This is known as a kicker or rim lighting, where we will essentially be positioning it so that the tiniest little thread of light will come into the scene and illuminate the subject. Now, this is important. You don't want to, well, let me say this. To set this up the quote-unquote normal way, you do not want to use the second light to completely illuminate the person from that back left shoulder, because you need some of those shadows to create a sense of that drama. But if you use a kicker light in the background to, again, separate them from the background, you can get some interesting patterns of light and interesting looks. However, that's the normal way of doing it. I do encourage you to experiment, because ultimately with lighting, that is your greatest resource. Find a lighting pattern that you like, find one that resonates with you as an artist, and then experiment. Move the lights around just a little bit, change the angles, the degrees, and tilt and so forth, put gels onto them, find what works for you and your brand that will create a unique visual voice that will help you bring clients into your brand and into your studio. So I've tilted it just a little bit toward her. From my perspective back there, it looks like the entire light should miss her completely from behind, so that there should just be just a tiny little bit of light on her left shoulder. Let's see how we go. We have that little bit of light that's on her left shoulder, which is key, and that's helping to separate her from the background. Her hair is getting just a little touch of that light as well. Now, in this new studio space that I'm shooting in, there's a lot of walls here that are throwing light as well. Typically, if you can try to get the background a bit darker than what you see in these images, that would be preferred. And a way to achieve that is to move the subject further away from the paper. Now, in this case, from my studio, I can't do that because the two outside walls are pretty close, so the light's just kind of bouncing off that and coming back into the scene. But the reason why I bring that up is because you want to embrace the shadows. You want to, that sounds very dramatic, and to embrace the shadows inside of you. No, you want the shadows to be in the scene because it creates the drama of this, and that's what's so beautiful about it. It isn't just the triangle of light on the face, it's all the other shadows into the scene. And when you introduce new lights to it, typically you would not want to eliminate all the shadows, but if you start eliminating some of them, make that a very specific choice. Experiment with the light by using a gel. Now right now I actually have an orange gel onto this second light so that it would throw a little bit of orange and warmth into the background and throw a little bit of warmth onto her, because if we think about the drama of all those shadows, I know it's slightly, right? Shame on you, because we're still in the summer in Arizona technically, although we got a break yesterday. It was gorgeous weather and it's beautiful today. It's gonna be hot as hell like a week. Anyway, think about using gels or different modifiers to ultimately make those choices of the second light coming into the scene purposeful so that it can add to the overall imagery of this. So that's Rembrandt lighting pattern. It's a pretty simple one once you understand where to position this main light, the key light, to be able to get that triangle onto the left side of the face. Experiment with using a second light. Make design choices about throwing color into it or modifiers so that it isn't an accident, but all on purpose for art and design. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you like the content you found in it, make sure to give the video a like and consider subscribing to the channel because new content debuts each week in photography and Photoshop education. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of that new content when you return to the YouTubes, and make sure to visit her Instagram account because she's a brilliant artist and she's got a lot of great work out there, so give her some love on Instagram. Until next time, we'll see you out there in the world of Photoshop.